So today I listened to What Wands Won't Break by Daedalus. Daedalus is an artist that I have been very interested in ever since I first heard a single of his out on Brainfeeder back in, I think, the summer of 2019. I heard a snippet of it on Instagram and I was like, what is this? And as I would come to know, it was a song called Velt. And what I noted that song for was that it was very abrasive, it was very soft, and it was very mysterious. A lot of those qualities kind of floating around in it. And so naturally, I came to be like, okay, I'm going to check out the rest of this guy's music, because this way that he is able to turn ambiance, industrial ambiance, into both a percussive and a melodic groove just amazes me. Like, what else is he capable of in his music, in his electronic stylings? So yeah, I've kind of been gradually going over his discography in the past year, and there's a lot of gems, a lot of good stuff there. A lot of his albums feel like the result of him walking through some sort of musical candy shop and just taking samples and sounds and different genre conventions and just filling his pockets. And then he goes back and kind of smashes and blends them all together to make these really kind of wondrous and mysterious stories and pieces of music. Sometimes his music sounds like this. Other times, his music sounds like this. And then also, it can sound a lot like this. This new album of his, What Wands Won't Break, kind of finds him smashing and blending sounds together to create a series of distorted and punchy dance floor grooves. It's very textury, it's very frantic, a lot of abrasiveness, with just a tinge of melody always sitting on the horizon at all times. The kind of progression of songs feels like you're going through a series of rooms in a hacked video game, with some things sounding a little better than others. I think maybe one of the detriments of the album is that when you have so many songs on it, say there's 23 songs on this album, if you're looking for more sonic diversity from track to track, it's increasingly harder to do with the, increased number of songs. So some songs on this can sound a little bit more like filler or a little more uninteresting than others, but as a whole, it's kind of an interesting experience if you're going to sit back and just let it bleed into your ears, because I think that's probably the best way to go about it, and then maybe trying to dance to it as well. It's kind of fun. There are still plenty of gems on this album where you really get to see Daedalus's style shine through in just his unique way that he is able to construct, arrange, and chop up all these different sounds. It's just like this big cloud and symphony of ideas almost. So let's talk about those. The album opener, Cauldron, kind of gives you this really anticipatory and driving vibe. It's almost a really good preview for the rest of the album that comes up. You've got these absolutely crushed and saturated bass pulses that are playing right over this 4-on-the-floor groove with all these, really fragmented and chopped drum samples. It really gives you a taste of what's going to come on the album. A lot of thick bass, a lot of unforgiving and very punchy percussion, and just completely frantic grooves. And I think those stylings are really embodied early on by tracks such as Querent and Fettle. Querent kind of has this beat that feels like it's erratically staggering around and feels like it's going to fall apart at any minute with how insanely syncopated and full of polyrhythms it is. It's like this big cloud of fragmented percussion samples that are just swarming and swarming around you. Fettle, on the other hand, really kind of hits you with this barrage of triplet kicks and breakbeat fills that are just hitting your ears with no remorse. They're just coming right at you. It's just, it's crazy. Another standout amongst the bunch of those early songs is the lead single of the album, Sunflower Stems. This is kind of where we get our first semblance of melody. On this one you have what sounds like a digital violin being played at breakneck speeds, and then also these kind of guitar chord risers every now and then, very intermittently. It's a very, very shuffly beat, I'll say that. The track that immediately follows that, Narwhale, is kind of this post-boss fight sort of music where you're looking at all your stats and where your experience ranks up. It's really, it's kind of optimistic, it's kind of curious. It's kind of like a song that's telling you to take a breather for just a second, right before we hop back into the insanity. And as you might expect, the insanity just kind of turns up even more with tracks like Datura and Unyielding. Datura is a track where it kind of feels like you're dancing so fast that with each step that you take, you're being transported into a different room. You have just all these vocal chops and percussion chops swarming you and shifting constantly, that it feels like you're just never going to be able to grab onto something and you're just moving freely and freely throughout this space. With a track like Unyielding, the chaos feels like it's a little bit more controlled, but it's a bit more sinister and a bit more dangerous. It really gets you alert right from the start with these scrapey kind of pluck sounds, and then dives immediately into aggressive and really, really hummy bass to drive the rest of the beat. This one feels like the ground is constantly shifting and morphing around your feet, and you can barely even stay standing. Kenosis is another point of interest on this album because it kind of feels like this much more optimistic sounding track compared to everything else. I really love how it starts off like you're pulling a record back and then letting go, but once it starts going, it speeds up exponentially. It kind of feels like it's this big wheel of drums with a house groove at its very center. And to keep the video game analogy alive, songs like Brandish, Chiliad, Mahogany, and Drubbing kind of feel like the Elite Four of the album. These songs are all very abrasive, challenging, and mysterious in their own ways, in a very anticipatory way, I think. They all feel as a whole like they're leading up to something even bigger. And that bigger thing is the penultimate track of the album, Zenith, which is just something else, I'll tell you that. If anything, this is like the final boss song of the album. It's euphoric, it's abrasive, and it's just really, really unrelenting. Not a single second of sound is wasted here. Pretty much everything that you can sonically even imagine is being thrown at you in this song. It's full of samples, full of vocal chops, full of beats just switching around and around and around, and yet it still feels cohesive and melodic throughout, at least to my ears. You know, if you're hearing this and you haven't heard music like this before, you're gonna be like, holy moly, what is going on here? The first time that I listened to this, it was like an ascending sort of moment. I was just like, was being shot into my ears. Holy, whoa. It's a real treat for anybody who likes to have their ears beaten to a pulp by different sounds. So you're in for a treat with that one. And you can finally kind of rest with that final song on the album, You and Me. It really is the credits song of the album, if I do say so myself. It really has that mix of complexity and simplicity that you've kind of seen hinted at through different songs on the album, but it really tones it down, and it's really just like coming down from the high of Zenith and those previous four songs to give you something that's a bit more warm. It's kind of hugging you, and it's like, all right, we made it through this, pal. You know, let's chill out. Just you and me, bro. I think overall, I'm a very big fan of this album, even if not all the songs are successful, but the songs that are successful heavily make up for the filler tracks. It's something that I would recommend to anybody who wants to explore kind of dancey music that is very, very outside of the norm, or music that is maximalist music in a way, or who wants to explore the genre of deconstructed club, because this is a very interesting take on that. Let me know what you think of the album, what you think of the songs. You know, did you have some favorite songs that I didn't mention in the comments down below? Also, like the video if you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe if you want to see me make more of these things. But yeah, I'll see you next time.